Christmas Eve was supposed to be about warmth, lights, and love. But that night, I stumbled onto a scene so cold and cruel, it shattered everything I thought I knew about family. My name is Matilda. I'm 25 years old. And until this past Christmas, I believed family was the one thing you could always count on. We could bicker, roll our eyes at each other, storm off during arguments. But at the end of the day, when the lights went up on the tree and the smell of sugar cookies filled the house, we always circled back. Or at least, that's what I thought. This Christmas proved me wrong in a way that still leaves me shivering at night. Even under 3 blankets. The snow had been falling since morning, layering the streets in a thick white blanket. My train ride from the city into my hometown was slow, delayed more than once, but I didn't care. I'd wrapped all my gifts carefully. Little things, mostly, since my bookstore paycheck didn't stretch very far. A hardcover of a mystery novel for Dad, a silk scarf I'd hunted down on clearance for Mom, a candle for Hannah, a baseball cap for Jason. And for Grandma, I'd found this delicate silver locket shaped like a heart, with enough space inside for 2 tiny photos. One side I left blank, and on the other I put a picture of the 2 of us from when I was 7 years old, standing in her garden, her arm wrapped tight around me as I grinned with missing teeth. I thought she'd love it. I thought she'd wear it close to her heart, like I'd wanted to keep her close to mine. When I arrived at my parents' house, I remember stepping up the walkway, the windows glowing with Christmas lights, the faint sound of carols drifting from inside. For a moment it felt normal, like nothing had changed. But the second I walked in, I knew better. The warmth wasn't there. Not the temperature. The thermostat was cranked high as usual, but the atmosphere. It was brittle, sharp, like walking into a room where someone had just finished a fight. Mom didn't even turn around from the counter where she was chopping vegetables. Dad grunted from his recliner. Hannah barely looked up from her phone, and Jason smirked at me like he knew something I didn't. I forced cheer into my voice, setting my bag of presents down by the tree. Merry Christmas Eve. Silence. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Where's Grandma? The knife Mom was holding hit the cutting board with a little too much force. She's resting, she said flatly without looking at me. Resting? That was unusual. Grandma Evelyn didn't rest on Christmas Eve. She orchestrated. She was always in the kitchen, rolling out pie dough, sneaking candy canes into our stockings, humming Silent Night in her off-key warble. The house always felt alive because she was alive. So why was it so quiet without her? Dinner came, but it wasn't the same. We sat around the table with plates piled high, but nobody laughed, nobody toasted. Jason drank more than he ate, making little digs about how I still worked retail, how I was wasting my degree shelving paperbacks. Hannah scrolled on her phone, barely lifting her eyes. Dad muttered something about the game being on later. Mom pretended I wasn't even there, and the whole time, that chair at the end of the table sat empty. The chair that belonged to Grandma. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I set my fork down, my voice sharper than I intended. Why isn't she here? Dad's jaw clenched. She's fine. Drop it. But I knew he was lying. His eyes shifted, his voice too controlled, and deep in my gut, that knot twisted tighter. The meal dragged on, and afterward everyone shuffled into the living room to half-watch a Christmas movie. I sat stiffly, staring at the twinkling lights on the tree, my heart pounding. Something was wrong. I felt it in every fiber of my being. So when no one was looking, I slipped on my boots and coat and slipped outside. The air hit me like ice, my breath visible in the glow of the porch light. Snow crunched beneath my feet as I walked toward the backyard, scanning for I didn't even know what. And then I saw her. My grandmother. She was huddled on the back porch, her body trembling, her silver hair dusted with snowflakes. She wore only a thin sweater, her legs tucked up, her arms wrapped around herself. Her lips were pale, her cheeks almost colorless. "Grandma," my voice cracked as I rushed to her, falling to my knees in the snow. Her eyes opened, lighting up when she saw me. "Matilda," she whispered, her voice weak but warm, as if she'd been waiting for me. My throat closed up. "What are you doing out here?" "It's freezing. You're going to get sick." She gave me a shaky smile, her teeth chattering. They said there wasn't room for me inside. The words hit me harder than the cold ever could. I stared at her, stunned, as if my brain couldn't process it. No room? In the house where she had raised 3 generations? In the family she had held together with her own 2 hands? My chest burned with rage. I pulled off my coat and wrapped it around her frail shoulders, pulling her close. She was so light, so fragile, it terrified me. I could feel the tremors racking her body. "No, Grandma, no. You're coming with me. I'm not leaving you out here." Tears stung my eyes, freezing on my cheeks as I lifted her carefully, her arm draped around my neck. She tried to murmur protests, something about not wanting to cause trouble, but I couldn't listen. I could barely hear anything over the roar of blood in my ears. Through the window I saw them, my family, laughing now, faces lit by the glow of the television as if nothing was wrong, as if their mother, their grandmother, wasn't sitting outside in the snow. I wanted to break the glass. I wanted to scream, to force them to look at what they'd done. But I didn't. Because right then, the only thing that mattered was getting her warm. I half carried her down the block to my car, my boots slipping on the ice, my arms shaking from the weight of both her body and my fury. I bundled her into the passenger seat, cranked the heat, and watched as her color slowly returned. She reached for my hand, her fingers icy but steady. "Thank you, my darling girl," she whispered, closing her eyes. And that was the moment everything changed. I drove us back to my apartment, the city lights casting long shadows on the snowy streets. I kept glancing at her, terrified she'd stop breathing, terrified that if I hadn't checked, I would have lost her that night. When we got inside, I laid her gently on the couch, wrapped her in every blanket I owned, and made her a cup of hot tea. Her hand steadied around the mug, her lips regaining color as she sipped slowly. "I knew you'd come for me," she said softly, her eyes shimmering. "You've always been the only one who sees me." I sat beside her, tears running silently down my face, and in that moment I made a promise. I would never let them hurt her again. Not my parents, not Jason, not Hannah, no one. I tucked her in that night, watching her chest rise and fall as she slept peacefully on my couch. I sat in the armchair, wide awake, the glow of the Christmas tree lights reflecting off the window. Outside, snow fell softly, covering the city in white. But inside me, something darker stirred. The realization that the people I called family could cast out the very woman who had given them everything. That their hearts could be so cold, their souls so blind. And I knew. This was just the beginning. Because no matter how much I wanted to protect her, I also knew my family wouldn't let this go quietly, and neither would I. The morning after Christmas Eve, I woke up in the armchair with a stiff neck and the taste of bitterness still heavy on my tongue. The first thing I saw was Grandma, curled up on my couch under a mountain of blankets, her breathing soft and steady. Relief washed over me like warm sunlight, but it was quickly replaced by anger the second I remembered why she was here. I crept into the kitchen, made coffee, and stared out the frosted window at the street below. Kids were dragging sleds through the snow, laughing, their cheeks pink. A man in a red cap shuffled past with a bag of groceries, humming to himself. It was Christmas morning, the kind of morning that was supposed to be magical, but my chest burned because I knew the truth. My family had left my grandmother outside in the cold like she was a burden, like she wasn't worth the heat inside. I heard her voice behind me, soft and raspy. "Matilda, dear." I turned quickly, setting down my mug. She was sitting up now, her silver hair mussed, her sweater wrinkled from the night, but her eyes, those blue-gray eyes, were clearer than I'd seen in months. "How do you feel?" I asked, hurrying to her side. She patted my hand. "Better. Warmer. Thanks to you." Emotion swelled in my throat, but I forced it down. "You don't have to thank me, Grandma. You should have never been out there in the first place." She sighed, looking down at her lap. "They don't see me anymore, Matilda. To them, I'm old, I'm slow, I take up space. They'd rather not be reminded that time catches up to everyone." Her words cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. My parents, my brother, my sister, people she'd raised, cared for, sacrificed for, had decided she was too much. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. "I won't let them treat you like that again," I said firmly. She gave me a sad smile. "You're my fighter. You've always been my fighter." Later that morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Where are you?" "We're waiting for you to open gifts." My stomach twisted. They wanted me there, sitting under the tree, smiling like nothing had happened, pretending last night hadn't been a betrayal. I typed back quickly, my hands shaking. "Grandma's with me. She's safe. You left her outside last night. Don't contact me again until you can explain yourselves." It only took 2 minutes for my phone to start ringing. Dad, then Jason, then Mom again. I ignored them all, turning off the ringer. I couldn't listen to their excuses, their manipulation. Grandma watched me silently from the couch, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, "You know they won't stop." "They'll come here," I nodded. "Let them. This time they'll have to face me." Sure enough, by mid-afternoon, there was pounding at my door. "Matilda," Dad's voice boomed. "Open this door right now!" I felt my pulse quicken, but I stood tall, crossing the living room. Grandma's hand reached for mine, squeezing gently as if to give me courage. I opened the door only a crack, keeping the chain latched. My father's face was red, his eyes sharp. Mom stood beside him, lips pressed into a tight line. Jason leaned lazily against the railing, smirking, while Hannah clutched her phone like she was filming the whole thing. "What do you think you're doing?" Dad growled. "Dragging your grandmother out of here like a thief in the night?" I stared at him, incredulous. Dragging her out? She was freezing outside. What kind of people leave their own mother out in the snow? Mom's eyes flickered, just for a second before she narrowed them. "You don't understand, Matilda. She's been difficult. She complains about everything, refuses to eat what I cook, keeps the TV too loud. We just needed peace." "Peace?" My voice shook with fury. "You don't get peace by shoving an 80-year-old woman into the cold. You get peace by remembering she's the reason you even have a roof over your head." Jason snorted. Always so dramatic. She's fine, isn't she? You swooped in like a hero. Congratulations. I wanted to punch him. She's not coming back to your house, I said, my voice steel. She's staying with me now. Dad's face darkened. Don't be ridiculous. You can't take care of her. You can barely take care of yourself. Give her back to us. No, I said firmly. I won't let you hurt her again. For a moment, silence. Then Hannah muttered under her breath, "This is going on TikTok." I slammed the door shut. My heart pounded as I leaned against the wood, the sound of their angry voices muffled but still audible. Grandma sat quietly on the couch, her hands folded, her face calm. When I finally turned to her, she nodded. You did the right thing. I wanted to believe that. But deep down, I knew this was only the start. The days that followed were tense. My parents bombarded me with messages, guilt trips, accusations, even threats. Jason showed up at my job one afternoon, swaggering up to the counter like he owned the place. You think you're better than us now? He sneered, loud enough for my coworkers to hear. Taking Grandma like you're some savior? You're just making her miserable. I glared at him, trying to keep my composure. Leave me alone, Jason. You don't get to talk about miserable when you left her in the cold. He leaned in, his breath reeking of beer. You'll regret this. Security escorted him out, but the damage was done. Everyone at work whispered, asking questions. I held my head high, but inside I was shaking. Meanwhile, Grandma settled into my apartment like she'd always belonged there. She helped me cook, humming softly as she chopped vegetables. She told me stories I'd never heard before, about her childhood during the war, about how she met my grandfather, about how she'd worked 3 jobs to keep the family afloat when Dad was little. Each story was another reminder of how strong she was, how undeserving she was of the cruelty she'd faced. But as the days went on, I also noticed the toll it had taken on her. She tired easily, her cough lingering longer than it should. Some nights I lay awake listening to her breathe, terrified she'd slip away. And every time my phone buzzed with another message from my parents, I felt that fury build. They wanted her gone because she reminded them of their own selfishness. They wanted her silenced because she was inconvenient. And I decided then that if they wouldn't treat her with respect, I would expose them. I started documenting everything. The text messages, the voicemails, even the night I found her outside. I wrote it all down, time-stamped, detailed. Part of me wanted to take it to the police, but what crime could I prove? Neglect, elder abuse, maybe. But another part of me thought about something bigger, about telling the world. Because if my family could do this to their own mother, how many others were out there doing the same? How many other voices were silenced by the snow, by the cold, by indifference? Grandma's voice one night broke through my thoughts. Matilda, she said softly, as we sat at the table with mugs of tea, don't lose yourself to anger. You saved me. That's enough. But it didn't feel like enough, because I wanted justice, and I knew I'd stop at nothing to get it. The first week of January came with bitter winds that cut straight through my coat, but even that cold wasn't half as biting as the chill of my family's silence. It wasn't silence in the sense of absence. No, it was louder than that. It was silence dripping with menace, the kind that came in ignored calls one day, followed by angry voicemails the next. It was Jason showing up at my apartment door at 2 a.m, banging until the neighbors threatened to call the cops. It was Mom leaving long, tear-soaked messages about how I'd torn the family apart, and Dad growling about lawyers and property rights, like Grandma was a piece of furniture instead of a human being. And all the while, Grandma tried to carry on as though nothing had changed. She'd sit at my little kitchen table, humming while she folded laundry, or watch old reruns of The Golden Girls on my battered TV, laughing softly. But even then, I saw the weight in her eyes, the way she shrank whenever I mentioned Mom or Dad. She wanted peace. But peace wasn't something they were willing to give us. One evening, I came home from work to find Grandma sitting on the couch with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting my bag down. "They came here," she whispered. My chest tightened. "Who? Your parents?" "While you were gone. They knocked and knocked, and when I didn't answer, they shouted through the door. Your father said I was being brainwashed, that you had no right to keep me here. They said I belonged to them." The words lit a fire in my chest. "You don't belong to anyone, Grandma. You're not property. You're not a pawn. You're a person, and you're staying here." She smiled weakly, her eyes glistening. "I know, darling, but I don't want you to suffer because of me." That night, as she slept, I sat by the window staring at the snow piling up on the street, my mind racing. They weren't going to stop, not until they got her back under their control, not until they erased what they'd done and forced her silence. And the thought of that, of her suffering again, twisted something deep inside me. So I decided to fight back. I started small. I reached out to an elder rights organization I'd found online, asking about resources, about protections. They told me I had options, that I could apply for guardianship if I could prove neglect. They told me there were cases like this all the time. Cases of families discarding their elders when they became inconvenient. The thought made me sick, but it also steeled me. If my family wanted a war, I was going to bring the battlefield to them. The next step was proof. I needed evidence beyond my word. So I sat Grandma down one afternoon, set up my phone on the table, and asked her to tell the story of that night. At first she resisted. She didn't want to relive it. But when I explained that it could protect her, she nodded, straightened her back, and spoke. Her voice trembled as she described being told there was no room for her inside, the way they'd locked the door, the cold biting at her skin. Tears streamed down my cheeks as she spoke, but she didn't falter. By the end, I had it on record. Proof. The first time I played that video back, I knew it would change everything. Word started to spread slowly. I confided in Kayla, my best friend, who promised she'd stand by me no matter what. She even offered to post the video online to show the world what my family had done. I hesitated. Going public meant airing everything, meant inviting strangers into our lives. But at the same time, why should I protect people who'd left their own mother in the snow? When I finally uploaded it, my hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. The video went viral within days. People were outraged. Strangers flooded the comments with messages of support, calling my family monsters, calling me brave. Some even offered legal help free of charge. I read every word, my heart caught between relief and sorrow. Relief that people believed us. Sorrow that this was what it took for Grandma to be seen. My parents, of course, lost their minds. "How dare you humiliate us like this?" Mom shrieked over the phone one night. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family's reputation?" "Reputation?" I snapped. "You left your own mother outside to freeze. That's your reputation. You built it yourselves." "You ungrateful child," Dad growled. "We gave you everything and this is how you repay us?" "By slandering us?" I laughed bitterly. "You gave me everything?" "Grandma gave me everything. And you threw her away like trash. I won't let you rewrite that story. Jason chimed in with a sneer. This is all about you, isn't it? Playing hero, getting attention. You love the spotlight, Matilda? Well, enjoy it, because it won't last. But it did last. The video was picked up by local news, then national outlets. Reporters reached out, wanting interviews. Elder advocacy groups started citing it as an example of hidden abuse. Suddenly, my family's perfect suburban facade cracked wide open for the world to see. It should have felt like victory. But instead, it felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Because if I thought they hated me before, it was nothing compared to now. Jason showed up at my bookstore job again, this time with a camera shouting that I was a liar, that I'd staged the whole thing. Customers stared as security dragged him out, his voice echoing through the aisles. Mom cornered Grandma at the pharmacy one afternoon when she went with me to pick up medicine. How could you do this to us? She hissed, loud enough for everyone in line to hear. After everything we've done for you? Grandma, bless her heart, lifted her chin. You did nothing for me? Matilda did. Dad sent letters, long rants about betrayal, about disowning me, about how I'd regret crossing him. I burned them in the sink one by one, watching the flames eat away his words. But even as I stood strong, inside I was breaking. The constant tension, the fear, the public spotlight, it was too much. Some nights, I curled up beside Grandma on the couch and cried silently while she stroked my hair like I was a child again. One night, as we sat together watching snowflakes drift down outside the window, she spoke softly. Matilda, you've given me more than I ever dreamed. You've given me safety, a voice, dignity, but don't lose yourself in this fight. Promise me you'll keep living. Her words sank deep, but I wasn't sure I could promise that, because the truth was, I didn't know how to separate myself from the fight anymore. It had become my life, my purpose. Then came the night they crossed the line. I came home from work to find my apartment door wide open, the lock broken. My stomach dropped. Inside, everything was overturned. Drawers pulled out, clothes scattered, the couch cushions slashed. And on the wall, in thick red spray paint, one word, thief. I staggered back, my hands shaking, my breath coming fast. Grandma? I shouted. Her voice came from the bedroom, trembling. I'm here, darling. I ran to her, finding her curled up on the bed, her eyes wide with fear. They were here, she whispered. I heard them. I couldn't stop them. I held her tight, fury and terror colliding in my chest. That was the moment I realized they weren't just trying to scare us anymore. They wanted to break us completely. So I made a decision. I wasn't just going to defend us. I was going to end this. The night I found the word thief sprayed across my wall, something inside me snapped. I had tried to fight clean. I had tried to stay calm, to use the truth, to rely on justice and public opinion. But my family wasn't playing by those rules. They weren't satisfied with lies or guilt trips anymore. They had invaded my home, frightened my grandmother, and branded me like a criminal in my own space. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. That was the moment I decided this fight was going to end, one way or another. I called the police, of course. They came, took pictures, wrote a report, but I saw it in their eyes, the way they looked at the viral video, the way they muttered about family drama. To them, it was messy but personal, not a priority. Best you get new locks and maybe a security system, one officer said, his tone detached. My fists clenched so tightly I thought my nails would draw blood. My grandmother had nearly been traumatized out of her mind, and they were telling me to get new locks. So I did more than that. I bought cameras. I bought motion sensors. I turned my tiny apartment into a fortress. Ryan, the kind, steady guy I'd been seeing, showed up the next day with tools, insisting on helping me bolt extra locks onto the doors. He never once asked if this was worth it, never questioned why I was fighting so hard. He just worked beside me, silent but present, the kind of presence that anchored me when I felt like drifting off into rage. Grandma watched us from the couch, her frail hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "This isn't what Christmas is supposed to be," she murmured. I stopped mid-screw, looking at her. "I know, Grandma, but I promise you, this will be the last time they scare you." She gave me a small smile. "You've always been my fierce one." The weeks after that were a blur of tension and preparation. My parents filed more threats through lawyers. Jason spread lies online, calling me an attention seeker, saying I'd faked everything for clout. Hannah posted cryptic TikToks, vague enough not to be called slander, but sharp enough to keep me awake at night. And through it all, I held on to Grandma, making sure she knew she was safe, even when I didn't feel safe myself. But the breaking point came one Saturday night. I'd gone out briefly to the grocery store, leaving Grandma dozing on the couch. When I came back, I noticed the front door ajar. My heart stopped. I rushed inside, calling her name. She was still on the couch, but she wasn't alone. Jason was standing over her, his hand wrapped around her arm, his face twisted in frustration. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed, dropping the grocery bags. He looked up, his eyes wild. "She's coming home. She doesn't belong here with you. You're poisoning her against us." I charged forward, shoving him back so hard he stumbled into the coffee table. "Get out. Get the hell out of my apartment." Grandma was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Jason," she whispered. "Don't do this," but he didn't hear her. He pointed at me, his chest heaving. "You think you've won because of that stupid video? You think the world's on your side? You've destroyed this family, Matilda. You're nothing but a selfish brat who wants to play hero." I was trembling with fury, but my voice came out steady. "No, Jason. You destroyed this family the moment you left her outside in the snow. You, Mom, Dad, you did this. Not me." He opened his mouth to spit another insult, but that's when Ryan burst through the door. He'd been on his way over, he said later. Something about a gut feeling. He grabbed Jason by the arm, yanking him back. "You need to leave, now." Jason tried to shake him off, but Ryan wasn't having it. The two of them struggled for a moment before Jason finally shoved him away and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. I dropped to my knees beside Grandma, pulling her into my arms. She was crying softly, whispering over and over, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I held her tighter. "Don't you dare apologize. You didn't do this." They did. That night I made another decision. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about protection, about survival. I filed for a restraining order the next morning, naming Jason directly, and including my parents as well. I attached every piece of evidence I had: the messages, the spray-painted wall, the video of Grandma's testimony. The court date came quickly. Standing in front of a judge with my grandmother beside me, I poured out everything. How they had abandoned her, how they had harassed me, how Jason had broken into my apartment. I showed the video. I showed the photos of the vandalism. I showed the police reports. By the time I finished, the judge's expression was grim. The restraining order was granted. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My parents, of course, exploded. More voicemails, more letters, threats of lawsuits. Jason tried to confront me outside my work again, but was hauled off by police this time. Hannah posted teary-eyed videos online about how I was tearing the family apart, but the comments tore her apart instead. People saw through it now. They knew the truth. Slowly, painfully, the tide shifted. Grandma began to smile again. She came with me to the bookstore sometimes, charming the customers with stories from her youth. She cooked with me, filling the apartment with the smell of cinnamon and apples, reminding me that warmth wasn't gone, it was just relocated. Ryan became a steady presence, his patience and kindness weaving into my days, until I realized he wasn't just helping me survive. He was helping me live again. One snowy evening in February, as we sat around the tiny kitchen table, Grandma reached across and took my hand. "Matilda," she said softly, "I thought I'd lost my family, but you reminded me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. And you showed up." Tears welled in my eyes, but they were different this time. Not angry, not fearful, grateful. I looked at Ryan, who smiled at me like I was the only person in the world. I looked at Grandma, her frail frame wrapped in one of my blankets, her eyes sparkling. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt whole. The fight wasn't easy. The scars are still there, but I realized something important through it all. Sometimes, family isn't who you're born to. Sometimes family is who you choose, and that Christmas, the one that should have broken me, gave me the chance to choose. I chose my grandmother. I chose myself. I chose love over cruelty, truth over lies, warmth over cold. I am Matilda. I'm 25 years old, and I will never forget the night I found my grandmother freezing outside in the snow. Not because it showed me the darkness of those I once trusted, but because it taught me the power of standing up, of saying no, of protecting the people who matter. That night changed everything, and it gave me back my life.